Hi class, Mrs. Calvi here reviewing multiplying decimals. So I have a problem here, 1700ths times 3. So the one thing you have to remember with multiplying decimals, you do not line up your decimals. Also, I always start with whichever number has the most digits, and I would put that on top. So because 1700ths has the most digits, I'm going to start by multiplying with that on top. And then I'm going to multiply that by 3. And remember, you shift everything to the right. So you line for multiplying decimals, you line everything up from the right. And now I'm just going to multiply like I would typically multiply the traditional way. So 3 times 7 gives me 21. 3 times 1 is 3 plus 2 is 5. And if you notice, once I use what I've carried, I circle it so I know I've used it. 3 times 0 is 0. Now, common mistake students make. When we multiply decimals, you do not carry your decimal down into the answer. You do not do that, okay? So for multiplying decimals, what we are doing is we are counting scoops. So from the end of the number, we're going to count how many scoops it takes to reach that decimal point. So for this one, 2 scoops. So I'm going to go to my final answer, start all the way from the end of the number, and I'm going to count over 2 scoops, and that's where my decimal point goes. So in this case, my final answer is 51 hundredths. Okay, let's try another one that has a decimal point in both of the numbers, and I'll show you what you do there. All right, so here I have 4 8/10 times 3 2500ths. Now remember, I said I always start with the number that has the most digits, and because 3 2500ths has the most digits, I'm going to start with that one on top, so 3 2500ths. I'm going to multiply that by 4 8/10, shifting everything to the right. Do not line up the decimals. Now I'm going to multiply as I typically do. 8 times 5 is 40. 8 times 2 is 16. 16 plus 4 gives me 20. 8 times 3 is 24. 24 plus the 2 gives me 26. So now I am done with my 8. I need a placeholder. 4 times 5 is 20. 4 times 2 is 8, plus that 2 gives me 10. 4 times 3 is 12, plus that 1 gives me 13. So I'm going to add these up. I'm going to get 0, 0, 6, 5, and 1. Okay, so now I'm going to count scoops as to how to figure out where my decimal goes. So counting scoops from the end of the number. 1, 2 scoops for the top number, and another scoop for the bottom number. So a total of 3 scoops. So 1, 2, 3. So my final answer would be 15 600 thousandths. Okay, that's the answer you would put down. 15 600 thousandths. Okay, now some of you might say, well, isn't that the same as 15 6/10? Yes, they are the same, but when you solve this problem, you have those zeros here, so you should be including them. All right. All right, let's try a different type of problem. Okay, so here we are evaluating. Remember, evaluate means to solve. I am evaluating 3x. My 3 is next to my variable, so I know it's multiplication. They're telling me that x is equal to 4 47 thousandths. So I am going to go ahead and plug in this 4 47 thousandths in for x. That would then give me 3 times 4 47 thousandths. So I'm going to do that multiplication. Now I'm going to put the number with the most digits on top, which is the 4 47 thousandths. I'm going to multiply that by 3 by shifting everything to the right. 3 times 7 is 21. 3 times 4 is 12. 12 plus 2 is 14. 3 times 0 is 0. 0 plus 1 is 1. And then 3 times 4 is 12. Now I need to count scoops to see where my decimal goes in my answer. 1, 2, 3 scoops. So 1, 2, 3 scoops. Final answer is 12 and 141 thousandths. Okay? So remember, evaluating means to solve. Plug in the value for the variable and multiply here. All right, I'm going to give you one more. It's a little bit more difficult, so this is a good one to see. Okay, so here we are evaluating again. We're evaluating 5t plus 462 thousandths when t is equal to 3 and 4 hundredths. So I'm going to plug in 3 and 4 hundredths into t, and it would become 5 times 3 and 4 hundredths, and then drop down the rest of the problem. Drop down the plus sign and the 462 thousandths. Now, according to order of operations, I have to do the multiplication before I do the addition. So I would then multiply the 3 and 4 hundredths times 5. 5 times 4 is 20. 5 times 0 is 0, plus 2 gives me 2. 5 times 3 is 15. Count how many scoops? 1, 2, 1, 2. So now this is equal to 5 and 20 hundredths. Drop down the plus sign and drop down the 462 thousandths. I'm now adding these, all right? So when I go ahead and I add these, I don't have space, but if you were to add these two numbers, remember, adding, you're lining up the decimals. So if you were adding and lining up these decimals, you would get a final answer of 15 and 662 thousandths as your final answer. All right, so remember, this here is adding, so you line the decimals up when you add. When you multiply, you shift everything to the right. Okay, that is it for now, and I will talk to you soon.